Welcome back to the Traders Network. I'm Michael Yorba, your host. Thanks for joining us. Broadcasting to you live from the Dallas KFXR 1190 AM Clear Channel Studios, streaming to you iHeart app, and if you're outside the borders of the United States, we have segment 2 here with Gary De Rodriguez, CEO, Peopleistic.com. Gary, thanks for coming back on this next segment. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Michael.
What is the secret to creating a dynamic culture where people thrive and excel in their performance?
As we were dropping off from the last segment, I'll continue along that same vein, is that organizations require to invest in the upskilling of self-leadership within their teams. And what I mean by that is to be able to provide trainings that the staff actually can self-lead their own emotional states, which then drives a higher performance and better behavior. That always comes down to that we're in charge of our emotions. Something outside of ourselves didn't do it to us. The way that we approach it, the meaning we give it, creates our own emotional reaction, which then drives behavior. We also have to increase the people intelligence, so our communication skills and the respect for the diversity in which each staff member needs to engage with one another really requires to be taught. Only like 7% of the meaning of our communication is what we say, 38% our tone of voice, 55% our physiology. I always say to people, it's like the least valuable thing you can ever trust about someone's communication is what they tell you. The most valuable thing is what their body does. So to be able to increase the people intelligence, not only in the internal staff, but also for sales and for engaging with customers. So the need for people intelligence, I think, is very high in organizations. But I think most importantly is to teach a group, a team, how to identify problems, how to innovate, because a lot of what I do is I go in and I train how to actually innovate like Thomas Edison. We've done some research on the strategies of innovation, and of course Thomas Edison was one of the greatest innovators. So we have that sort of broken down into a strategy to train teams on how to innovate. And then most importantly, I think teaching people how to think kaleidoscopically, how to solve problems from taking multiple perceptual positions, and then come up and generate ideas. And those ideas then can be presented to management or have a middle management team where those ideas, once approved, can actually be put into a project and be project managed back out into operations. So what that does is it gives teams a voice. It gives teams the capability of saying, this is a problem that we see at our level that we want a voice in attempting to resolve. And in my experience, not only running my own organizations, but working with other companies, I've actually seen the culture dramatically improve by giving the staff actually a voice in resolving the issues that deeply affect them on a daily basis, and then having those particular ideas honored and put into operations. It improves culture exponentially.
Let's drill down into that, because there's primary elements for destroying culture, and then the solution, the other side of it, the answer to correcting it.
Well, the thing I think that actually really destroys culture is a lack of caring from upper management or middle management. Bad leadership always destroys culture. That's the core of it. A lack of caring, bad leadership.
Let's just pause for one moment.
Please.
Bad leadership. The key highlights on that, because that's where you need to really start.
Would you like me to just elaborate on that?
I would.
Okay. Bad leadership. I was asked a question recently, why are there so many bad leaders? I think it comes down to this one thing, that when people get into leadership positions, I call it leader shame. They look at themselves and the facade of leadership is there, but the depth inside of themselves, one eye's looking behind them to see if someone's noticing that they don't know what they're doing, and one eye's looking forward as to the progression of the organization or the team. And if people came together and actually had authenticity about what they required to learn, applied themselves to learn it, rather than going into a position and viewing leadership as a rank instead of a service position, then I think we would have some progression in having our leadership evolve. A lot of leaders don't take into account the personal evolution they require to go through to actually get to a respected leadership role where people look at them and they go, we will follow you. Because if you cannot endear trust through consistent, congruent behavior, then you cannot lead.
Well put. Well put. Correcting it, though. What if you have a leader in place and you value what they do, but you need to help those issues get corrected? Can you correct it, or is it forget it? We got to replace it with somebody who has all the attributes that do fit this profile.
One of my personal values is that people can evolve. So I've coached over 11,500 people worldwide in my career, and it is always about having the holding the space that anyone can improve, anyone can evolve to the next level of who they're desiring to be. First of all, if there's a willingness. Second of all, if there's courage enough to face yourself and your own internal blind spots and move through it into new action. Most of the time, Michael, people are running on automatic, these automatic unconscious strategies, which is fundamentally based in fear. And when you're able to get them to break through it and align them to a higher reason why they are leading and into a servant leadership role, which makes them more of a human leader, then you endear the trust, then you endear the congruency of their behavior, because they're coming from a higher logical level in their actions.
I get it. Let me skip through here some of these topics we're going to talk about and move.
Sure.
Business leaders and owners supporting and protecting the culture that they've built. This is something that requires some diplomacy rather than a blunt instrument.
It requires collaboration, and many times, like I said, leadership is not a rank, it's a service position. So if we're looking at how can we actually move forward, yes, someone has to make the decisions, but oftentimes the more information we gather, the greater collaboration that we have, the more perspectives that we can harvest, the better decision we'll make for the ecology of the culture. And when someone has a very hierarchical view of their leadership role, it becomes a recipe for disaster in time, because none of us are perfect. We all have our blind spots. And in that hierarchical view, oftentimes we will come across a situation where we will operate and our blind spots will interfere, and we will make a very devastating decision which does not take into the ecology of what that decision is going to affect and how it's going to roll out through the ranks and files of our organization. And people in midline or bottom of the organization will look up to upper management and go, you don't care, because upper management did not take into account the ill effects that those decisions will have on staff.
Any takeaway messages you want the audience to hear?
I would say invest in your internal stakeholders. They are your legacy, and they are your succession. And create an end-user experience with your clients that endear them to you. And always remember the empowerment of your staff and the way that this staff embodies your organizational values, because the profit center is where staff meets customer or staff meets supplier. And always and forevermore, it's about the end-user experience, but it's also about the supply chain experience as well.
Your book again, and any events that you're going to be at, so people can drill down and maybe shake your hand and open up to you a little bit more.
The USA website is Peopleistic.us. I'll be listing different events on that particular site. And I will be doing an influencing training for leaders here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, probably in late July. That will be occurring. So I'll be posting that up on the website as far as the location, the time, and date.
And I'd really like you to come by and meet my staff.
I would love that. Thank you so much for having me on, Michael. I deeply appreciate it.
My pleasure. Gary De Rodriguez, CEO Peopleistic. That's peopleistic.com. Up next, on the other side of this break, we're going to come back with Cammie Dean, and we're going to talk about the election results that she's been out all night keeping tabs on this stuff. We'll be right back after these messages.